everyone. Thank you all for coming to Recipes for Success. Today we're talking about academic essay structures. My name is Jana Weiss, and we have a wonderful presenter with us here today. His name is Christopher Smith. He is one of the best tutors, and he is going to be giving you an amazing presentation today. Please help me welcome Christopher Smith. Welcome, Christopher.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm Christopher Smith. I am the full-time English faculty tutor. And today I'm going to be talking to you about academic essay structures. Essay writing can seem very difficult if you've not had a lot of experience with the process. But don't worry, the more essays you write, the more it gets to be secondhand. Here are the most common essays to be assigned in courses for an associate's degree. You have the narrative essay, where you essentially are telling a story. You usually describe one specific experience you have had. And then there's the cause and effect essay. And usually this essay will either focus on the cause of something or the effect of something, but not both. Another essay you're probably going to write at least 3 or 4 of in your career at HCC will be the literary critical analysis, which utilizes academic terms to assess how a work was organized or realized. The argumentative essay, which takes a strong position on an issue and demonstrates why this position is that you're positing is generally the correct one. And of course, the research paper, which utilizes multiple sources to investigate a particular subject. However, we're going to concentrate on 3 basic steps to writing an essay. We're going to talk about grasping the structure of the 5-paragraph essay, applying its structure to the argumentative essay, and then applying it to the research paper. And remember, although we will only apply this basic structure of the 5-paragraph essay to 2 other essay formats, the argumentative and the research paper, it can be adapted to fit most any kind of essay assigned. The 5-paragraph essay. The structure for a 5-paragraph essay is as follows. You have your introductory paragraph, you have your body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, and your conclusion. But wait, maybe we are going a little too fast here. Let's define those terms. Let's talk about the introductory paragraph first. Introductory paragraphs can be difficult for many people, and it can help to have a visual to look at. So try to think of the introduction as an inverted triangle in the sense that you start your paragraph with an initial broad statement. Then you narrow the focus to your specific subject in subsequent sentences. And then you finish your introductory paragraph with a sentence that is a very specific thesis statement. Let's say you're working on an essay on taking care of kittens. The opening broad statement might be, all living beings need some kind of care. That's yes, that sets us up for an essay on taking care of kittens, but it's a pretty large topic. It could be about, feeding children, or it could be about prescription medication. It's a broader aspect of the thing we're going to be looking at. So we start with an opening broad statement like that. All living beings need some kind of care. Then we narrow our focus in the next sentence to something a little bit more connected to what we're going to be talking about in the essay under consideration. One kind of animal in particular that needs care is a kitten. And then finally, we conclude with a very specific thesis statement. Kittens need to be taken to the vet once a year, groomed once a week, and fed twice a day. But the opening broad statement I gave in that first instance, it doesn't have to be that one. One of the things I hope becomes clear is that there are a lot of ways to skin a cat, if that is an appropriate metaphor to use, considering this topic. Your opening broad statement might be kittens are wonderful pets, but they come with certain responsibilities. Again, it's hitting on the topic we're going to be concentrating on in the paper, but we're taking on a broader concept in that first sentence. But then we narrow our focus. One of the responsibilities of having a kitten is taking care of it. And then finally, our very specific thesis statement, kittens need to be taken to the vet once a year, groomed once a week, and fed twice a day. And then, of course, if we were writing it in paragraph form, this is how it would look. We always indent or tab that first line of each new paragraph. But you see, we have the exact same thing that we wrote before. And in these examples that I'm giving you, I'm generally sticking with like 3 sentences: the broad statement, the narrow and focus statement, and then the thesis. But in fact, an actual paragraph you wrote, I'm doing that for time, and also so as not to be too overwhelming. In an actual essay, an introductory paragraph is much more likely to be 5 or 6 sentences long. There's not actually a technical number of sentences that are required for something to be a paragraph. In point of fact, you can actually write a paragraph that is 1 sentence long. And you can conversely write a paragraph that is more than a page long. But both of those instances are extremely rare, and generally in college classes, teachers, especially in the first 2 years of college, are looking for paragraphs around 5, 6, 7 sentences long. But for the sake of what we're doing here, we're just going to limit it to 3 sentences. Keep in mind, though, that you could take 2 or 3 sentences to expand from the initial broad, to narrow from the initial broad statement to the thesis, or maybe let your broad topic cover 1 or 2 sentences and then narrow down in your next couple of sentences. The only one you want to stick to just 1 sentence for is the thesis sentence. A thesis needs to be 1 sentence, no more, final sentence of your introductory paragraph. And in fact, what I'd like to do now is work with you and practice creating an introduction. I want you to think for a minute, if you were going to write an introduction for an essay on the topic of how to study for class. Remember, you're going to want to begin the paragraph with initial broad statement. Then you want to narrow it down to focus on the subject, and then narrow it further to a specific thesis that lists 3 points. And before we go any further, I'm going to say something that might confuse you. Don't write your introductory paragraph in the order in which the sentences are going to come in the paragraph. Especially in a case like this where we're practicing, because you don't know what you'd actually be putting into that essay on how to study for class. Instead, let's first think about that specific thesis that lists 3 points. I want someone here, if they'd be willing to, I'm going to switch over to the Hue camera, so that you can see me writing it down as we talk about it. But I would like someone to give me if not even an entire sentence, what is one good study habit that you can think of?
Feel free to unmute or type it in the chat.
Absolutely.
I would say highlighting.
Oh, all right, very good. Highlighting. And I apologize for my terrible handwriting. I try to get better, but I never improve very much. When I used to be a teacher, I would get really great student evaluations, except they'd always say, we don't know what the hell you're writing on the board. It's always been a problem for me. So yes, highlighting is one. What's another?
Taking notes is in the chat.
Ah, yes, absolutely. And let's get one more.
Anybody have another suggestion? Reviewing. Color
Ah, yes,
coordinating
okay.
different parts of the notes and time management.
Yeah, well, that's that's okay. Let's go with reviewing, but all of those are good.
Those are really good.
So, we've got our thesis. We know that we want to write a paper on how to study for class, and where we're going to emphasize highlighting, taking notes, and reviewing. Let's take these three ideas and turn them into a sentence. To effectively study for class, it is important to highlight major passages in your reading, take notes on the information, and review these points there we go. And there, let's see. When you write quickly, you can make a mistake. These points. The best thesis sentence I've ever written. Not because your ideas are bad. I'm just being clumsy in the way I'm putting those words together. But I just want to show you that a lot of times when you're crafting a paper, and especially with introductions, not thinking about writing it the way you'd read it, but getting down the essentials first and then building from it can help you a lot. So now here we have a very nice thesis sentence. Now let's go back a couple of steps. What is a broad topic under which the idea of studying for class could fit? One way you might approach this is to ask yourself, why do we want to study for class to begin with? What's the reason we want to study for class? Anyone want to hazard an opinion on that?
It's to help you prepare for your test.
Oh, all right, great. That's terrific. That's one. And I always remember again, multiple ways to skin a cat. This is one broad topic we could begin with, but we absolutely could begin with that. We could start our essay by saying, in college, one often has to take exams. Then we narrow our focus in order to prepare for our exams. We must study effectively. And then we can plug in that thesis statement. To effectively study for a class, it is important to highlight major passages in your reading. Take notes on the information and review these points. Just out of curiosity, did anybody else have a different broad idea they might start out with? What are one of the reasons we want to learn how to study successfully?
There were several in the chat.
Sure, just give any one of them. I'd be happy to, yeah, any of them.
Okay, to not fail, to get good grades, to actually obtain information, and to help get better grades for your test or final.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
I would
so
also say to stay prepared for classes.
yeah. And all of that could be really good, you know. Preparation for class is essential. This involves knowing how to study effectively. And then we could go on and plug that thesis in right after that. Absolutely. There's so many ways we can do this. But we do always want our introductory paragraphs to follow this pattern. It's very important. And so I'm trying to talk while I'm switching my camera back over to my presentation. But you know, this is the craft that thesis first, especially if you're not sure where you're going to go in your paper first, because that gives you a map to where you're going to go. And then ask yourself, how do I draw the reader in to that thesis? What's the bigger picture I want them to be aware of? And then how do I narrow my focus from that bigger picture to the specific topic we're talking about? I myself crafted an example here just because I'm going to keep showing examples as we go along. But the ones that we've done are terrific. My example was students have to learn how to do many things. One important thing they have to learn is how to study. And then these are the three things I chose. In order to study effectively, try and study at the same time of day every day, find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted, and make sure you have your notes and your textbook with you. Now we have the concluding paragraph. And I'm dealing with the introduction and conclusion before we deal with the body paragraphs, just to give you an overall sense, because the concluding paragraph is kind of an inversion of the introductory paragraph. And so taking them side by side right now, when we've just written an introductory paragraph is helpful. So what you do in a concluding paragraph is you restate your thesis in slightly different words. Then you go back to that broad topic you started your essay with, and then you leave the reader with a final thought that is not a question. Don't stress about that final thought. It's not about saying the most wise, penetrating, insightful thing anyone has ever said in the world. The point is just to leave us with a final idea about why we should care about this topic. And it's very important that we don't phrase it in the form of a question, because remember, the point of a paper is not to ask questions of the reader, but to provide readers with answers that we have sought out. I want to go back to the two introductory paragraphs that we crafted earlier. And I want to highlight here. So we're going to start by taking this thesis, and this time it is actually coming first. We're going to tweak it, not use exactly the same words. This is where you of a later generation suffer more than I did, because when I was growing up, we had typewriters and we could just retype the same thesis at the end of the paper and nobody thought twice about it. But now, ever since computers have come along, teachers have looked at those and said, huh, they just copy and pasted that sentence. I don't like that. So now we have to slightly reword it. But we don't have to do a lot here. We could just say, instead of to effectively study for class, we could say, studying effectively for class involves, instead of it is important to, involves highlighting important passages, taking notes in addition, and regularly reviewing the material. So we basically said what we said in our thesis. We just sort of tweaked the wording a little bit. Now, we have these two broad topics that we started with. One was about studying for exams. One is preparation for class. Either one of those, we just want to go back to that broad topic. We want to say, this will ensure that you are prepared for your upcoming test. Or if we were going with that previous or that second example we were given, this ensures your effective preparation for class. Now, that final thought When we're doing this, we want to think along the lines similar to what I said when I asked you to come up with that first big idea. Except it's a little bit more of a prophesizing the future rather than stating a current situation. So if we were going to finish off this paragraph with the idea of preparing for a test, what is obviously our desired outcome on that test? Well, we want to pass it, right? I mean, that's why we want to study for the test so that we do well on the test. You know, so we say something like following these steps ensures, or probably we should say, not absolutely for certain, but helps to ensure a higher grade on your next exam. What we also might do if we were, let me ask that second potential reason for studying, preparation. Why do we want to be prepared for class? You know, what's the important thing about having been prepared for class by studying well? That's a little bit different from the specifics of taking a test, but there's still probably a pretty good reason one wants to do that. And what might the reason be? Anyone?
To kind of get some early knowledge on what is to come and being taught within the class
Oh,
and
yes.
taking some additional notes from the
Yeah.
class
Oh,
and add it to what
yes.
you already prepared for.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And so we can use very much, we can say by taking these steps, you will find yourself already versed in the subject and maybe with more information going into the next class than those seated around you. Yeah, yeah. So we want to think of that broad statement. We begin the topic with what's the larger picture of what we're already dealing with. We want that final thought at the end of the essay to be, this is what you can expect, or this might help you to get what you want out of studying, whether it is that you're going to pass that exam or get a higher grade on that exam than you've been getting before, or whether or not you're going to be more prepared, more ready to grasp the information and be a step ahead of other students, or at least just a step ahead of where you normally are in your ability to process the information that you've been given. Yeah, very much so. Well, very, very nice. All of it. Thank you. Um, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to just the example that I did before for myself for the cat thing. Well, I mean, for the class thing. Oh, we got the cat thing. My example is the best method for effective studying is to study every day at the same time. Remember to have your textbook and notes and find a place that isn't too noisy or distracting. It is true that the responsibilities of students are quite numerous, but this is easily among the most important ones. That I went back to my idea that students have a lot of responsibilities. That was my broad topic that I began my intro with. Using these three strategies will make the responsibility seem lighter and will help you to achieve the grades you are hoping for. Body paragraphs. And this is another reason, because I don't want to keep making y'all like fill out body paragraphs for this whole imaginary essay. So I'm just taking the topics here from the little examples that I came up with on my own. When you're writing a body paragraph, think about it as sort of like a three-layered cake. You always start your body paragraph with a topic sentence that makes clear what the focus of the paragraph is. For instance, make sure you study every day at the same time. Then you follow that with supporting sentences that explain your point. Daily routine puts you in the mood to do a task because it becomes part of the natural cycle of your day. It's probably best to study at a time when you are alert, not too early or too late. But if you are a morning or a night person, those times might work best for you. And finally, you end your paragraph with a transition sentence that prepares the reader for the next paragraph. The practice of studying at the same time every day is important, but it is also important to have the appropriate materials with you. And that, of course, would lead into a next paragraph about making sure you have the appropriate materials to study with. The reason you want to have this transition sentence is that it will make your papers flow a lot more smoothly. It won't feel like every paragraph is kind of plopped in disconnectedly or maybe even randomly without any thought that you're building towards something. This shows it's stitching the parts of your essay together so that it flows nicely from one topic to the other, and we get a sense as we're going on of a paper developing, moving in a particular direction. And then, of course, I've given you the example of what I just wrote here, but in the paragraph form. Now, while the 5-paragraph essay is the most common form of essay, there are a couple of other essay formats that are worth examining too, and one of them is the argumentative essay. A common structure for this kind of essay is as follows. You have your introduction, first point in your argument, second point in your argument, third point in your argument, and then the paragraph where you acknowledge the opposing argument and offer a concession or a rebuttal. And then we follow this with the conclusion. Now, as you can tell, this is sounding a lot more, this is sounding very much like the 5-paragraph essay, except we've inserted the acknowledgement, concession, rebuttal paragraph right before the conclusion. Now, it can be a little bit difficult for people to think about this because they're thinking, well, I'm making an argument. I'm in favor of X. And so how do I possibly, why do I want to give any reason why people should do Y instead of X? But part of what the concession, the acknowledgement concession rebuttal does is it acknowledges that there are people who don't think the same way you do. And that you are aware of why they feel the way they are, but you can give a good reason why even those people should consider doing what you advise. Now, it may seem to you like, well, geez, if we're doing this fake essay on how to study for a paper, who thinks studying is bad? And I don't want anyone to try to answer that question. I hope no one ever thinks that studying is bad. But what you might want to think of is not people just don't want to do this at all, but what part of this might they not do too well with? So maybe that idea of studying every day at the same time, you realize not everyone's going to want to do that or can do that. So you write a rebuttal paragraph where you say, some people reject the idea of studying at the same time every day. One reason is that they may have schedules that vary from day to day. So they cannot study at, say, 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Maybe they work at that time on certain days, but not others. Maybe the difference between their Monday, Wednesday class schedule and their Tuesday, Thursday class schedule would make studying at the same time on all 4 days impossible. This is understandable, but even setting a schedule that occurs only on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday is an effective workaround and one that would still have the benefit that comes from creating a weekly routine. Now notice what I did there. I acknowledged an objection, even acknowledged the validity of it, yet I still managed to show how the point I made is still worth considering. Now, depending on the nature of the assignment or the topic at hand, you may be faced with an opposing position that simply isn't valid, which is fine. I mean, if you're arguing that it was wrong for Germany to embrace the Nazi Party in the 1930s. Like some people think the Nazi Party wasn't a bad idea. You don't want to go in that direction. You don't want to do that. There are certain moral arguments that cannot be argued, and there are certain factual ones too. If you're writing about the roundness of the earth, the fact that there are flat earthers who deny the world is round, you can't, if you're writing a scientifically valid paper, try to finagle that and say, well, there's some good reasons for thinking that the earth is flat, because it just isn't. But even in those instances where there isn't room to incorporate the opposition's position into your paper, the very fact that you are acknowledging that you're aware of this opposition, that you've investigated to a certain extent their position, leads to your looking more trustworthy. This is called ethos, and you'll learn about it in your English classes. Um, it will increase your ethos, your sense of trustworthiness. That even though you don't agree with this position, or even though this position is not tenable, you are aware that it's out there, and you can say affirmatively that alternate position is wrong. So that is how we incorporate the rebuttal refutation paragraph into the argumentative essay, and thus slightly change the shape of that 5-paragraph essay that we've talked about beforehand. Having done that, let's look at the research paper. Again, we're following the same format here that we followed before. An intro, where you start with a broad topic, narrow down to a specific thesis statement, body paragraphs that support that thesis statement, and a conclusion, restates your thesis, returns to the main broad point you started with, and leaves the reader with some sort of final idea about why this is an important topic, or why they should follow the advice you were trying to give them. Now, the only real difference here is that you are incorporating a number of sources that you have found in researching the issue. These may include online scholarly articles, newspaper articles, books, journals and magazine, personal interviews. One thing I want to be clear about here, and I think it's something that is sometimes missed, is that the research paper is still your paper. These things, these online articles or newspaper articles or personal interviews or books or journals are all there to support the point that you are trying to convey. They're there to support your thesis. A research paper is not just a bunch of articles quoted one after the other for no particular reason. And it isn't a completely objective, these are just the facts, I'm giving you the data sort of thing. You are still making an argument in your thesis that you are utilizing these sources to support, and maybe utilizing them also to show, if it's an argumentative research paper, which can exist, to help show that you are aware of the opposition's position on the subject. Now, with the research paper, you might have 5 or 6 or 7 body paragraphs rather than 3 or 4. It really does depend on the specifics of the assignments or the decision about how you want to structure your paper. For instance, your professor might want you, following the introduction, to give a brief history of your topic before getting into your argument. Okay, well, that comes before the paragraphs in which you make your central argument. Or maybe you decide you want to organize your paragraph based on the number of sources that you have that support your position, maybe 1 paragraph for each. If you have 4 or 5 sources or more, you could end up with that many body paragraphs. Maybe a requirement of your research paper is that it be argumentative. In that case, you need an acknowledgement rebuttal paragraph. It's a lot of variety here, but we're still doing the same basic thing, that introduction, those body paragraphs that are structured along the lines of how you've laid things out in your thesis, and a conclusion. Always basically that same template. And to show you that template once more, we have an introduction that starts with an initial broad statement. Then you narrow your focus to the specific subject, and then you give us a very specific thesis statement, followed by body paragraphs that begin with a topic sentence that makes clear the focus of the paragraph, followed by supporting sentences that explain your point of view, and then ends with a transition sentence that prepares the reader for the next paragraph. Finally, leading to a concluding paragraph where you restate your thesis in different words, go back to the broad topic the essay started with, and leave the audience with a final thought that is not a question. If you follow these basic guidelines, you will be in a position to do well on any kind of assignment that is given to you. Of course, the more you write, the better your skills can get. So you might want to practice some of these, maybe make up a little fake assignment and try it out. And remember, when you are practicing your essay skills, this helps you to get to this. And I hope that this has been a helpful presentation for you. Does anybody have any questions? I did want to say, are no questions, although even as I'm talking, if questions come to you, I'm happy to answer them. Remember that the Academic Success Center, which I work for, is here for you, and that we offer tutoring on every subject that is taught at the university. Math, science, and English, you will basically find an in-person tutor on every campus. With certain other subjects, you might have to either go to a specific campus or arrange a virtual meeting, which you can either do at one of our sites or from your home. In fact, you can have even a session with an English or a math tutor or a science tutor who's on campus. You can make that a virtual appointment to do on your own. Our number is 713-718-8184. I believe Jenna has put a flyer up in the chat that has all that information for you. I love to say it's free, and it is free in the sense that you're not charged when you come in, but you're paying for it with your tuition. So use every cent of that money you put into your tuition. Don't let it go to waste. Come see us. Even if you think you're doing well in the class, doesn't hurt. It can always increase your grade point average when you get a little tutoring. And I hope we see you. And that's all I have to say. Did anyone end up having any questions they wanted to ask me?
I'm not seeing any questions, but I just want to thank everybody for coming. We hope to see you at our next event. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.